You're trying to create your dream life the wrong way. In neuroscience, we call this the bottom-up approach. And this is why I struggled for years to lose my belly fat and fix my performance issues inside the bedroom. And most important of all, my low confidence to attract the life of my dreams. And later on, I'm going to reveal the one thought that changed my entire life, the one question that I asked. But first, we need to understand how the brain works, and even more importantly, how the brain is connected to the body. Because with this knowledge, you'll know exactly where you're at right now. And then you can begin to reverse the process. I'm going to teach you how to frame your mind away from the boring and stupid bottom-up approach to your life goals. I still remember when I chose to get my PhD in neuroscience. I was a 21-year-old virgin, never kissed a girl before. In fact, I never even held hands with a girl. I was fully into my studies, my parents were happy, and I was basically obeying their orders and being a good boy. But I always struggled to understand, why was I so afraid of women? Was it my religious brainwashing or the threats that I received from my mom? You better not get a girlfriend, Farhan. We want you to excel in your education. I am the only girl for you, she would say. And due to all this confusion and craziness in childhood, I was dying inside. I would receive these love letters from girls, both at my religious school and my high school. But my mom would tear them up. You know, I just felt blocked inside. Here I was desperately wanting those girls, but I was sexually repressed and frustrated. And I didn't have the balls to rebel. So I thought, if I can fully understand how my brain works, if I could literally understand the underpinnings of neuronal circuits, the pleasure and reward systems, and how the brain controls fat loss and muscle gain, and what molecules actually get past the blood-brain barrier, how male hormones work, how my metabolism works. What if I could somehow connect my brain to my body exactly how I wish? Maybe then I would achieve all of my dreams. You know, I wanted to stand up to my mom. I wanted to go out with those girls and have sex with them. I was thirsty, and I knew that this was going to be a hard battle. Imagine, a PhD can take 7 to 8 years, especially since I was studying in a very prestigious lab under a Harvard-trained neuroscientist and working with Nobel Prize winners like Dr. Hubel. And remember, I was focused on reductionism, the process of looking at the brain at the level of the circuits, but then going deeper into single neurons, and then going even further and studying individual ion channels which pass electrolytes in and out of neurons. I did all those experiments, man. Opening up rat brains and cutting the tissue into individual slices and recording the electrical activity with tiny little electrodes. Heck, I even recorded from awake and behaving monkeys. For 7 years, I had an actual monkey sitting next to me inside a box as I was recording from his cerebral cortex. So the first thing I learned is that everything, I mean everything, initiates in the brain. Let's start with testosterone. Very early on, I learned that testosterone is the key to male confidence, muscle growth, and bedroom performance. So I read everything about it. And because I had the world's best tools available to me at the Montreal Neurological Institute and Hospital, I felt unstoppable. I learned that hormones are molecules which connect the brain to the rest of the body. For instance, in order for testosterone synthesis to occur in the testes, the hypothalamus has to release GnRH, or gonadotropin-releasing hormone. It has to start with the brain. But it's not just a one-way street. Many molecules, such as hormones, peptides, even things like gluten and alcohol, in order for them to reach the brain, they have to pass the blood-brain barrier. I still remember when I looked at those endothelial cells under a microscope. You see, even though I was training for my PhD in neuroscience, I completed the basic neurology education in medical school. I was one of the 12 students chosen to do this. We had lots of clinical experience. We did histology, pathology, and endocrinology. And the blood-brain barrier blew my mind. Here's this thing, by the way, is fully functional at birth, which acts like a bouncer at a club. It lets the good guys in and keeps the bad guys out. Let's say you eat some bad food. Those parasites will not make it across the blood-brain barrier. Your brain is fully protected. And there are many ways to get across. There's passive diffusion, which happens only for molecules less than 400 Daltons. Then there are carrier proteins, which transport molecules from the blood to the brain. Like, for instance, testosterone is one of these molecules. And then, of course, there are other hormones. But even though testosterone synthesis is triggered by the brain, testosterone is actually created inside the testes and then secreted back to the brain, where testosterone can bind to androgen receptors. It all works phenomenally. So I knew early on that I needed to get enough good fat and good cholesterol in my body in order to optimize testosterone production. I also learned that growth hormone, which is involved in tissue repair, fat metabolism, and protein synthesis, works synergistically with testosterone. I don't know if you've noticed, I was focusing on the nitty-gritty stuff, a very reductionist, bottom-up approach. I wanted to fix my confidence issues, get rid of my belly fat, and put on lean muscle by nerding it out. I thought, what if I could solve all of my problems using neuroscience? And soon I'm going to tell you if this worked or if it failed, and whether I actually was able to get my dream life from it. So one thing I knew for sure, food is crucial because the micronutrient building blocks of the brain and body are in those foods. I needed enough good fat and good cholesterol in my diet to have balanced hormones. After all, cholesterol is the precursor to testosterone and every other sex hormone. Then I dug deeper. I wanted to learn everything I could about how to grow muscle. Turns out, this also starts in the brain. In fact, the motor cortex, which is right here in the frontal lobe, sends motor units to the muscle fibers. The more motor units recruited by the brain, the faster muscle can grow. I learned that in order to build strength, we need a distributed network of muscle activation. That's done with compound movements. And growing muscles larger requires isolation. This was so cool. Basically, unless the connections from the brain to the body are strong, muscles cannot grow. The synaptic strength at the neuromuscular junction must be maximized. So basically, it's all about connection. And I knew that my body was not connected to my brain properly. I tried to contract certain muscles just by thinking of them, but I failed. My thoughts weren't enough. I couldn't feel my body at all. It just seemed like a huge disconnection. I still remember wearing these shorts, which would sense how different muscles were being activated when I was doing compound movements. And there was massive asymmetry in my body. You see, my front side would get activated, but my posterior chain was asleep. That's when I started realizing that my testosterone was so low because I wasn't activating the big muscles in my body. My glutes, my hamstrings, my lats. No wonder my T was 376 nanograms per deciliter. That's the testosterone of an 82-year-old man. So at that time, I kind of understood the science of muscle growth. And I also knew that scrawny guys, those nerds that I was friends with my entire life, didn't have confidence either. They were all virgins like me. So next, I wanted to learn about fat loss. I wondered whether fat loss is also connected to the brain somehow. And voila, it sure is. Neurons directly connect to fat cells, or white adipose tissue, and control how much fat will be burned. They control whether a fat cell will shrink or remain large. And they do that by producing heat, a process known as thermogenesis. This was all super cool. I imagined, what if I could lose my gut and become proud to take my shirt off at the beach? What if I could actually become jacked like those high school football players who fucked all the cheerleaders? I was beginning to feel that pursuing a PhD in neuroscience was indeed a damn good idea. But fat loss is not that simple. We have to figure out how to balance two very important hormones, leptin and ghrelin. Leptin is released from fat cells and signals to the brain that you're full, so we stop eating. And ghrelin is released by the stomach to tell the brain that we are hungry. And of course, as you may have guessed, both of these have to pass the blood-brain barrier in order to get those neurons to detect satiety and hunger. So I would have to go on a diet which would control these hormones properly and get me shredded. And in fact, obese people suffer from leptin and ghrelin resistance, and it's one of these reasons they keep eating when they're actually full. The connection between the brain and the body is totally screwed up. And obviously, it's not just leptin and ghrelin. Insulin is involved too. And when we eat the wrong foods, the mucosal lining of our gut gets destroyed, and hence these signals can't even get up to the brain. This same thing was happening to me. I was eating because of stress and eating lots of junk as well. The satiety signals were not being sent up to my brain. So I kept eating and kept gaining belly fat. And I was horny, but I could never make a move. And as I realized later on in life, my scientific training was actually digging a deeper hole in my confidence. It was making me more anxious, more in my head. I was doing every single calculation, and honestly, it was going nowhere. I tried many diets, keto, carnivore, vegan. I tried so many different exercises and protocols. Even though I understood so much about the brain and body connection, something was not right. Something was not clicking. Imagine, from the age of 21 to 24, I did my master's degree in neuroscience where I specialized in how the brain processes learning and memory. And then, from the age of 24 to 31, I did a PhD with the specialization in visual electrophysiology. Imagine, 10 years went by, and I was still a virgin. I had at least kissed a few girls by now, even got a blowjob or two, went down on a couple, even fingered one. But when it actually came time to doing the thing, I could never get it up. And my body went from being skinny fat to growing an even larger belly. I would lose a few pounds and then gain it all back, plus more. And no matter how much weightlifting I did, my muscles remained small. I just couldn't figure out how to turn on my neuromuscular switch. Honestly, I just felt like I was struggling to rewire my brain properly. Until one day, I read a damn interesting paper. By the way, this was not neuroscience stuff. This was spirituality. It was this new emerging field of neurotheology. And unfortunately, this paper was quickly retracted, and only a few guys like me actually read it when it first came out. And due to my religious background as a Muslim, I was always interested in God and how the brain and religion could somehow be linked. How our human mind is connected to the spiritual body, not just the physical body. As I was reading this article, I realized that the brain-body connection is not just about the physical brain and the material body. It's actually about human consciousness and how it's linked to the body of the universe. By the way, this woo-woo shit was super weird at first. Here was this unknown scientist publishing a paper in neurotheology, and then the paper gets canceled and no one in the world even knows about it? I had to give it a try. You remember the bottom-up approach we discussed at the very beginning? The practice which I learned from this guy's experiments was the opposite. Instead of bottom-up, which is the convention in science, he was teaching a top-down approach. It was completely revolutionary and weird as hell too. The paper asked, what if looking at neurons and specific hormones and synapses was a waste of time? What if the human mind can connect to everything? Past, present, future, in infinite dimensions, from one single thought. What if the thought was in the form of a question that you asked the universe? What if the focus and attention and belief and expectation is all that matters? I was hopeless and desperate, so I went all in. Full 100% trust in this new way. I had one thought, more like a feeling, and I started practicing how it would feel to have a six-pack and walk around shirtless and have a hot girlfriend and rock her world every night for as long as I want. So every night before I went to bed and every morning after I woke up, I visualized, I wrote down, and I imagined the feeling of my dream life like it had already happened. I followed what the paper said exactly. And even though I didn't download it, I memorized every technique easily because of my photographic memory. This was around the time when I was finishing my PhD and defending my doctoral dissertation. Honestly, I didn't even study for it. I was so confident that morning. My thesis committee said that they had never seen a dissertation in which a student was so calm and confident. The next week, I was in Vegas picking up chicks. Shortly after, I had my very first sexual experience, and it was amazing. A one-night stand with a girl I met on Lincoln Road in South Beach. Somehow, through those techniques, I manifested my own business, which has gone viral in the health industry. Imagine, with zero background in running a business and absolutely no knowledge of marketing or advertisement, I was able to build one of the largest companies in the men's hormone space. And now we have a huge team, more than 60,000 customers in almost 100 countries. I traveled the world, got a six-pack, grew lean muscle, and got jacked so easily. And all I had to do was be grateful to the universe for giving me what I wanted. And at the same time, I felt that I already had it. My God, my entire life has completely changed simply by following this top-down approach and manifesting the life of my dreams with zero work and zero obstacles. And today, I am married with a beautiful wife, and we are grateful to the universe for such a strong and loving relationship. And I still remember that trip when I was in the plane going from Vancouver to Tulum. I simply asked the universe this question: universe, bring a girl into my life which would join me in my life's movie, which would be with me arm in arm, and we would build a family together. At that time in the plane, I felt what it would feel like if this had already happened. I felt those feelings. I followed those techniques exactly. And when I got to Tulum, the second day I was there, I met my wife. And as I'm telling you this, I'm getting goosebumps, and it's still hard for me to believe that this type of manifestation is actually possible. Because I come from a scientific background. We are trained to make fun of people who try to manifest stuff and do this woo-woo spirituality. But when I went all in and I trusted this method with my entire heart and soul, it worked. So if you too want to make your dream a reality, start being grateful to the universe. Start speaking to God. Have a conversation with Him and thank Him, and feel every second as if you have it all, because you do. There's only room for positivity and beautiful high vibration frequency in our life. And I'm grateful to you as well. Take care, my brother, and God bless you. Bye now.